will come to order. Please rise and join me in pledging allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. Couple of announcements before we do the minutes. One is that our health officer is not here this week, so Mr. Taltone will not be at tonight's meeting, nor will Kelly Doyle, a member of the board, or Andrew Foreman, who notified me this afternoon that he's tied up in his practice and will be unable to be with us on short notice this evening. Did everyone receive a copy of the minutes of the November 21st meeting? I know. Okay, then if you've had an opportunity to look at those minutes, good job, by the way, Ms. Lee, on formulating these minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Oh, I actually just have one correction for it.
Let's have a motion and a second, and then we'll. Yes, we'll do that before we vote. Dr. Humphrey has moved to approve the minutes. Ms. Wishner has seconded them, and Dr. Donato.
Okay. Oh, it had just said that in there I had approved Coco to be quarantined at home, where it's more, I passed a motion and the board approved Coco to be quarantined at home. Okay,
Ms. Lee, you will make that correction, thank you, and forward it to Mr. Taltone at your earliest convenience. Any other corrections, additions, deletions? All in favor of approving the minutes as amended? So, aye?
Aye.
Any contraries? Okay. At this point, it gives me great pleasure to introduce the newest member of our board, Dr. Madeleine Ramos Saldivar. And at this time, I'd like to ask Dr. Saldivar to... Dr. Saldivar, you would need to press the button and activate your microphone.
Hello? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for welcoming me. I'm very excited to be here. Just a few words about myself. I'm a general internist. I completed my medical school training locally at Jefferson Medical College in Philadelphia, and then moved off to the University of Maryland Medical Center in Baltimore for my residency training. I've been in practice for 13 years as a general internist, spending most of that time in academic medical programs in New York, Boston, and back here in the Philadelphia area. Currently, I work full-time as an internist in the teaching program at Lankenau Medical Center in Wynwood. And I also have a master's in public health with focus on health policy and management that I have had since 2003 from Columbia University. So this is a wonderful opportunity to use both of my training. Two passions in my career that I hope to use here as well. One is for teaching. I love to teach students, teach residents, teach the community, teach patients, so hopefully that'll come in handy here. And then also I love to improve the way we do things, so systems analysis and improving the efficiency of healthcare and our various community programs. I've lived in Radnor Township for the last 5 years since we moved back to Philadelphia, I guess the last question was, what do I hope to achieve by joining the board? And I think it's just basically to overall overall improve the health and well-being of citizens of Radnor Township through education primarily, educating ourselves, educating our kids, and educating our neighbors.
Well, again, welcome, and it sounds as though you've got tremendous background and will make a great contribution to the work of this board. When we finish speaking, we press the button again so that you don't have a live mic. We've all received Mr. Taltone's report, and he's not here to answer any questions about it, but if anybody has any questions about the report, we can either defer them to the next meeting, or if you want to raise them now for the record, and Mr. Taltone will get back to us when he returns to his office. Any questions about his report? Okay, and we will move on to actually the old business portion of the agenda. Well, Ms. Doyle is not here, so she will not, I know she attended the EAC meeting. However, she did not, she's not here this evening to report on that, so we'll have a report on that at the next meeting. As board members know, the Alliance for Safe Kids, or ASK, had a program at Radnor High School a couple of weeks ago regarding cyberbullying and internet safety. And I and Ms. Burns were both in attendance at a very informative meeting. Unfortunately, due to another commitment, I had to leave before the very end of the meeting, but Genevieve Burns stayed for the whole meeting, and she has agreed to report on that. Ms. Burns.
Thank you. Before I start talking about the program, this is the second program that I went to with REACH, and I think the first one was also with ASK too. But I just want to thank whoever is coordinating these programs, because they're really hitting some very important points, and the education that they're giving the students and the parents of Radnor Township and is really important, and they're very much right on time as far as the issues that they're discussing. This program that I attended was on cyberbullying and the internet safety, and it was presented by the Assistant District Attorney. Did the presentation, Joe Lesnick. Am I saying that wrong? Right. Okay. And he did a wonderful presentation, first discussing the issue with bullying, and that it is a crime, and that they actually see bullies over time do actually end up in jail, which I thought was really interesting. And it was ways for parents to talk to their kids. I mean, that was a lot of the overall theme, was for parents to talk to their children about text messages, emails that they're receiving from others, where they thought that there might be bullying involved. The other thing that he talked about was this sexting, where people are texting pictures that, like boyfriends and girlfriends are sending pictures to their partners, and they sometimes they're naked, and that this then can just go viral, and the students just don't understand how the consequences of what they're doing. And that he talked about if there was any type of, this, again, going back to talking to your children, being careful what you're putting out there, and that there was a reporting site as far as if your children did come to you, even for the bullying, any type of sexting, or any type of pictures that the children might receive over the internet, which I can give to Alexa. And then the last one, point I'd just like to bring up was the whole thing with Facebooks. And I was actually talking to my daughter who graduated from Radnor 5 years ago, and she said, all of this is new. Even, some of this is new for her. And, people just didn't use all this technology as much, and it's just like gone, talk about going viral. All of this has gone viral. But the one thing he said that is if you do have children, that you should be your children's friend on their Facebook. He suggested that no one ever actually use a picture of themselves, that they use some sort of icon to represent themselves, and that there really are a lot of safety features in Facebook that you can go into, and you can make a private wall, you can go into the accounts, and there was all this. I don't do Facebook, so I'm talking quite, don't really know what I'm talking about with Facebook, but there are safety features in Facebook, and that to tell children never to face or befriend someone unless you actually know them. And there was he was just talking about, saving the pictures, saving the harassing messages, and that if you ever felt, especially with the bullying, that you were ever in danger, to take this all very seriously and to actually call 911 if you felt that there was any problem with this. But they had done this presentation earlier in the school. I have no idea what the reception was when they were doing it to the students. I'm kind of sad that I wish that there had been more parents there, because I think it would have really opened up a dialogue between parents and their kids about this type of issue. And I'll give this too. There's a Sergeant Andy Block of Radnor Township was there, but I think that might be a person of interest as far as if you have any further questions for the what we do here locally. Any questions?
Thank you for that. Before we have questions, I just want to add one thing, and it's a point of pride for this board that we were listed as co-sponsors of that event, and so I think that's an important thing. Before we have any questions, Mr. Kane is with us, Kevin Kane from the Radnor Township School District, and Ms. Burns alluded to the fact that the students at Radnor High School experienced the same program that was presented for parents. Did you get any feedback from the high school on that?
I heard it was well received. I didn't attend, but I did hear it was well received by the students of the high school.
Okay, questions about the program?
I just wanted to make a comment. This is at least the second year they've done it, because I went to this program last year, and it sounds like it was quite similar to what was done this year. And I know, so then also I have a kid who's a second year of high school. This is the second year he's had this program. So in a good way, to him, it's sort of old hat. He realizes everything you put on Facebook or online anywhere is permanent, that it can be there forever. It can be there when you apply to college. It can be there when you look for a job. It can be there. So I do think that the schools have been successful in communicating that to kids, and also the fact that, that harassment, that this does constitute bullying, and it is against the law, and it can have serious consequences for you. So let someone know if it's happening to you, and don't do it yourself. And so I think that they're doing a good job with it. I mean, I think the program should continue to be repeated, because, and as you say, there are always new things. Okay, so maybe we've gotten this far into this corner of it, but next year there'll be, all these other things that weren't covered this, you know what I mean? It is a constantly evolving thing, so. But I think there's certain basic principles, in a good way, the kids get it, you know?
The other thing is that he was an excellent presenter. I really felt that he kept people engaged. You know, if you'd heard it before, I think even you would have been able to keep engaged with his presentation.
You just introduce yourself again.
Yes, sir. Good evening, members of the board. I'm Mary Ann McCarthy, a health educator at Radnor Middle School. I've been at Radnor for 38 years. I just wanted to inform the board that Radnor Middle School has an ongoing anti-bullying program, that every student in every grade, 6, 7, and 8, receives an anti-bullying lesson in our health education class. It is co-taught by an administrator and or counselor and the health teacher. The reason that we co-teach it is to physically show how important it is to the students when you have two people there, and we, you know, devote a lesson each quarter, so that's for a year. And at a later time, if it is requested after you discuss at the board, I would be happy to share with you some of the lessons, because it is very important that you actually start earlier than something at, you know, the high school level, because so much bullying can take place beforehand. Also, we have an online reporting where the student can report anonymously if they see bullying or are bullied themselves. The parent can do that, or there's actually the pen and paper at the school. We take it very seriously. It's extremely supported by our administration and our counselors, and we have worked hard for several years to do this, and I don't think we've told you enough about it. But I'd be happy at your request and with the support of my administration to tell you about that at a later time. Thank you very much.
And we will probably take you up on that, so start preparing.
Start preparing, thank you.
I should add, too, that the Alliance for Safe Kids planning group has representation from the middle school. I'm just blanking on the woman's name, but someone does represent the middle school at the planning meetings for these events. Let me also interject. A couple of weeks ago, three of us, Ms. Wishner, Dr. Humphrey, and myself, attended a program sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Radnor Township, and it was a very, very good program. And the featured speaker was Dr. Walter Tsu, who is a former health commissioner for the city of Philadelphia, among other posts. He was a founding administrator for the Montgomery County Department of Health, Public Health. And his topic was a very, very timely one, healthcare reform. And Dr. Tsu talked about the issues with healthcare reform. And I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that he is unabashedly a proponent of the single-payer system, and he made a good case for it. Amy or David, anything to add to that?
Nothing except that there was a very lively discussion that took place afterwards. I think he covered all bases, and very engaging, very entertaining speaker.
Dr. Leader, anything new on teen health issues? I know that you and Ms. Wishner were working on a potential project for Alexa Lee. Is there anything?
I had just checked in with Alexa a little bit ago, and she was moving forward on some of the map ideas that you had, Amy. But she had some questions on some of the technical details, and so I was thinking maybe we could connect Alexa to Mr. Doling, who was so helpful in getting all the technical parts of the videos done and the merging. So that's the only contribution I have at the moment, but if you have more.
Well, the thing that you're referring to is around the issue of childhood obesity and the idea. The New York City Department of Health has been really a national leader in childhood obesity, and in fact, just this past week, some results came out from the New York City fitness tests that they conduct in the public schools every year, and for the first time, they saw a decrease in obesity rates, stronger among whites, stronger among higher income areas, and stronger among the youngest ages. But, this was like the first promising results about reducing childhood obesity that we've seen. Although it's hard to know what to attribute it to, I think that it's reasonable to assume that the efforts of the New York City Department of Health are for sure contributing to the success of efforts to reduce childhood obesity. And one of the things they've done is be very active around sugary drinks and communicating to the public about how much sugar is in sugary drinks and how many calories are in sports beverages other than water or coffee, any beverages that have calories, really how many calories are in them and how many servings are in them. So they have what I thought was a very effective series of posters that are in bus shelters and on buses and in a variety of places around the city, showing how far you have to walk or jog to use up the calories in a certain, different kinds of beverages. So they have a little chart, this beverage, this many calories, that means you have to walk, in the case of New York City, from, Grand Central Station to Battery Park, or using Google Maps showing, physically, this is how far you have to walk to use up that amount of calories. So I had wondered if we might want to think about doing something similar for Radnor Township, similar kind of chart of, common beverages that teens and younger kids drink, and illustrating, okay, this is how far you'd have to walk to use up that many calories from, Radnor High School to, the center of Bryn Mawr, whatever the, the distance is. So I think we're trying to figure out how to do that. And the idea would be that these could be posted in the school. They could be used in health classes. But it seems like an easy, relatively, the template is there. We just have to figure out the sort of technical things to do. But I think it seems like a reasonable thing to do, and would be, it's also fun. It's attention getting. You look at it and you think twice. But the New York City Health Department has done, really some groundbreaking advertising about this issue. So anyway, that's what that was about. But we also did get the body mass index data from the schools. Thank you, Kevin, for providing that. And so I could say a little bit about what that was. So body mass index is a weight for size measure. It's recommended that it be conducted, weight for length be done on children younger than 2, but starting 2 years of age and older. It's weight for height. And in schools in Pennsylvania, it's done annually, and the results are communicated to the families, and that's the sort of the extent of what the school does with it. But the fact that we have yearly data is a very, very helpful measure. So for the state of Pennsylvania, the most recent data online are really only from 2008, 2009, and those data show about, in K through 6, 16% of Pennsylvania kids had BMIs putting them in the 95th percentile or higher, which is what the definition of obesity is. And in grades 7 through 12, 17%. And in Radnor Township, looking at actually later data than that, in the 2009-2010 and this is public school data. 8% came out in the obese range for 2010, 2011, 14%, and 2011, 2012 back to 8%. So we're, below the, we're definitely below sort of the state levels, and Pennsylvania actually is a little bit below the national averages. So that's good for sure. I think it would be, I guess I would like to feel that somebody in the schools was kind of following these data as well, that there was some, I'm not aware of any sort of annual description of like the health of the kids in Radnor schools that might include some basic health data that we have like this, like immunization rates, number of days lost to illness. I don't know, just some things that would be sort of tracked over time to have a sense of how healthy are our kids and where are the areas that need to be addressed. I think despite the fact that these rates are lower than the state and then the nation, I mean, to me, it still seems like an issue I would like us to address because it has such severe consequences. I mean, childhood obesity tracks into adulthood, leads to earlier and longer exposure to all the diseases caused by obesity, various cancers, cardiovascular disease, stroke, kidney disease, respiratory disease, sleep disorders, mental health disorders, the significant and, which are all significant causes of death. So, they're all in the top 10 causes of death for the country. So, it's a serious health issue, and I think if there are some things that we can do to help address it, so much the better. And, maybe you can tell us how, how you deal with, this issue in the health curriculum.
A good role model is a good role model. All that data is kept, and I think it would be wonderful if this board, and that was my purpose of starting and coming. I came, as I told you, in the 70s when I started teaching in Radnor, and we had a nice liaison with the school district and the Board of Health. And I think it's very important to reestablish that and have that connection between the two. I would love to assign my students to read your minutes online so they see that we actually have a Board of Health and that you're responsible for our health and safety and how we are all connected. So if ever that's a possibility, they're online all the time anyway. They might as well read it and connect it to their health education. This is a very small town, and my greatest passion has been for the health of our children for a very long time. But the data you're asking for, I'm sure if we could have some type of small group, if a group gets too large, it doesn't function well. With the people with the data, or that can secure that data, like Mr. Kane from our nurses and those types of things, a health educator if you so desire, and someone from your board who might be new and interested in education. So I'd be more than happy to provide whatever you ask, and I think with your support, health education, in my opinion, and it's a very humble opinion, is the most important subject that these students take. Because a healthy child can grow up and do whatever they want to do. And that, I always tell them all the time, not necessarily, clearly not teach health education, but everything else will fall into place if we raise healthy children. And that is the commitment that I wish we would all make to these young people. So I would love you to take my email. It's marianne.mccarthy@rtsd.org, as is everyone's. Alexa, I'm sure, knows it, right? And let me know if there's anything I can do for you further. Thank you very much. And I have to go to the foot doctor, so excuse me.
Well, I'd be interested in Mr. Kane's comments on how we move forward from here along the lines Ms. McCarthy has suggested.
Well, certainly I think there's a value in looking at the data collectively. To formalize a committee to do that, we'd have to have the agreement of our superintendent. So it would also have to align itself with the goals that are set forth to us by our Board of Education. So there's a little bit of play in that area, so it's something we can certainly consider, and I'll talk to our superintendent about that.
I will greatly appreciate your follow-up on that, and any support any of us can give you with regard to that, please let us know. I think it's important to follow up on that. For Dr. Saldivar's benefit, we've mentioned Alexa Lee a couple of times. Last year, the Board of Health began practice, which I hope will continue, and it's certainly continuing this year, of working with Radnor High School to have a student intern from the high school work with us. And that interns, and Ms. Lee is this year's intern, that intern's duties are, one, to take notes at these meetings, and two, we, as you've heard, are working on a project that she can sink her teeth into this during this school year and produce a product at the end of it. Last year's intern began working on teen health issues, and the product was a video which is still on the Township's website under the Board of Health, Radnor Health Matters. And Ms. McCarthy, I'm mentioning this to you because it's something you can also take back if you want to put some of these things in front of the students at the middle school. All of the programs we've done under the aegis of Radnor Health Matters are still, to my knowledge, on the Township's website, and that's how you get access to those things. Any other comments?
I just have a comment that there was a number of studies actually this morning on NPR that were talking about childhood obesity. The one thing that I recall was also is that as children get older, they also stop playing in the sports. So I know it's hard to look at a lot of different things, but it's sort of, walking and, walking off that Coke that is, 2.5 servings, even though it only, over the Starbucks that you get. But it was just, there was just a different, at least 3 different studies that were mentioned this morning on NPR.
And probably one of the reasons that it was mentioned on NPR is the latest morbidity and mortality weekly report put out by the Centers for Disease Control highlighted, I believe it was the work that you've mentioned in New York over several years on this issue. And this afternoon I sent it on to Mr. Kane. So that's one of the things that Mr. Taltone sends to all of us. I have my own subscription online to that, so I get it twice, but that's okay.
I guess just this is sort of another example of if we had a health department kind of thing that a health department could do. I mean, even something like figuring out, okay, how could we have a budget for printing up sort of larger posters like this and getting them, having the sort of the wherewithal, and we all serve on a volunteer basis. We don't have, it's not like we have sort of staff to go promote this in the same way places with the health department do. So
Okay.
I had one other quick question, comment, exactly what Amy, what you were just thinking about. Down the line, if we're able to work with Alexa and we're able to create these neat maps about Radnor and Bryn Mawr with a Starbucks drink, is there a very modest printing budget that we could post them on community boards in some places in town, or get the word out, or?
Well, that's certainly something we can find out about. This board in and of itself does not have a budget. Mr. Fisher is not here this evening, the president of the Board of Commissioners, and that body's liaison to us. But I will certainly ask him what. I think it would be a good idea to ask him again when we're down the line and we know exactly what it is we want to do, because then we can get some actual dollars and cents attached to it and request that amount. Another issue that Amy Wishner and Kevin Kane, and I think to some extent Amy Leader, have all been looking at in the month since our last meeting, are school immunization exemptions. As we know, immunizations for a list of childhood illnesses are required for school entry and attendance. There are, however, under Pennsylvania's law, and indeed the laws in most other states, exemptions that are allowed for medical exemptions if you might be allergic to the vaccine, or if you have a religious or ethical or philosophical objection to having your child vaccinated, you can apply for the exemption. So, Amy, would you take it from there?
Sure. And Pennsylvania is one of a minority of states that offers a religious or philosophic exemption. Many states do not, because they deciding electively not to immunize means that not only is your child susceptible to the disease, but if they get the disease, they can spread it to others who may have a true medical contraindication, or no vaccine is 100% effective, so they may not have, they may be in that very small percent of people in whom vaccines do not provide coverage. And they can and are the source of making, starting and percolating along epidemics of disease, of vaccine-preventable diseases, which can be serious. So, just as sort of the background, the state data about religious exemption in the past 10 years have gone from 1.6%. Have gone from 0.9% to 1.4%. So, slight increase. But in the private schools, again, statewide, 1.6% to 4.2%. Public schools have gone from 0.2% to 0.9%, or actually 1%. So a sort of a slow but steady increase in the public schools, a pretty significant increase in the private schools. The data for Radnor public schools are kind of in every grade. There's between 1 and 5 people who have gotten a religious or philosophic exemption, and for the most part, these are to every vaccine. It wasn't like there was just one vaccine. So this includes deciding not to get polio immunization, for example, as well as some of the ones that have been more controversial, like measles, mumps, rubella, the MMR vaccine, and the varicella vaccine. And one of the things about school-age kids is that even if there's relatively good coverage in their school, sporting events, I mean, there have been, documented vaccine outbreaks from wrestling tournaments, from football games, from baseball games, baseball tournaments, and other kinds of, sort of inter-school activities. So it's something where the individual decision is not really an individual decision. You're making a decision for the community when you decide not to immunize your child. Again, I think it's something that's important for us to follow and to be aware if there, is a budding problem to nip it in the bud. So again, I think that's my main point about it, is to follow it over time, and also that I don't have the data for what the religious and philosophic exemptions are for the private schools in our area. So I just don't know that. In the public schools, it looked like sort of, not that bad. I wish it were better, but sort of not that worrisome. But I don't know what the stories of the private schools. And as I said, one type of private school has been particularly where large numbers of kids don't get immunized are Waldorf schools. Part of the Waldorf philosophy is that getting the diseases, quote, toughens you, and that it's you're somehow better off if you get the vaccine preventable diseases, which of course doesn't take account of the risks that you encounter with getting the vaccine preventable diseases. And getting some of them, measles, mumps, rubella, varicella, you do get lifelong immunity from having the disease, although of course you suffer the risks, including death from getting the disease, which you don't from getting the vaccine. But on the other hand, a disease like pertussis, just because you've had pertussis, you do not get lifelong immunity from it. So in a way, there would be continued need to get pertussis vaccine, which is one of the most common and serious vaccine preventable diseases around now. So anyway, that's what I found with that. Do people have comments or?
Well, I have a couple of questions. One may be better addressed to Kevin Kane, and the other relates to a point, but let me ask Mr. Kane first. Do you have a sense, other than the medical and religious/philosophical objections, how does the district monitor compliance or enforcement on the part of school administrators of the vaccine requirements? That is, are we certain that that when kids enter school, that they are as vaccinated as they need to be at that point, and then in terms of continuing attendance, that they're getting any necessary boosters or revaccinations as necessary, as required by the law? In other words, this does require some sort of monitoring, and I think we need, before we address religious and other exemptions under the law, we need to be sure that all of those kids whose parents aren't claiming such exemptions are as vaccinated as they need to be.
Correct. Our administrators work with our school nurses, our certified school nurses, to identify students who do not have the immunizations upon registration, at which time they work with the parents, work with the families to determine, are they getting the immunizations? Are they taking an exemption? The public school system, can, on occasion, deny the acceptance of a student because of not having immunizations. Oftentimes, the result is a religious immunization that you'll get from the parent. But the district does look into that regularly.
Herb, I just wanted to say that one aspect of that is that when So if, let's say, you're overdue for a series of immunizations, the day you enter school, you obviously can't get all 3 doses because there are minimum intervals between them. So you get provisional enrollment. And it's sort of odd because the time when all those kids who have the provisional enrollments, and there are actually quite a lot of them, when that gets checked is when those minimum intervals are up, which will be May. So May of 2012 is when those kids who needed, dose 2 or dose 3 of whatever the series is. So by that time, sort of the semester is almost over, but then they would have a problem the next year. But in sort of realistically, probably not, not that much is going to happen. And then I know, as you know, but others may not, that if there is an outbreak of vaccine-preventable disease, children who are not immunized against that disease can be excluded from school for the duration of the incubation period of the most recent case. So, but to me, it is really frightening that people don't get like polio immunization. I mean, especially because polio can percolate along. Only about 1% of polio infections result in paralysis. So you could have polio, and there has been polio circulating in the Amish, polio infection circulating in the Amish community in, within the past 10 years. So it's not, and as well, travel, people travel more and more. So, it's.
Well, I'm alarmed by the notion that if it's true that students whose parents may be told that they can't attend school unless they get the required vaccines, at that point they indicate that they have a religious exemption. That seems to me to be not something that was intended by the law, and I'm not sure what exactly we can do about it, but
It's a state law, and it is easier to sign the card saying you select a religious or philosophical exemption than it is to actually go get the immunization records for your child. So Pennsylvania is one of the most lax in the country in this regard, but it's a state law. Parents who want to do it are legally entitled to, and all you have to do is sign a card. In many other states, even those that offer this, there is a required, some sort of requirement, such as a meeting with a school physician or parents submitting something in writing or something else. Not so in Pennsylvania. You just sign the card and that's it. And so it is the easiest way to get your child into school, even if you end up getting them immunized. So, but it's a state law. Radnor is not a position to, as far as I know, we just live under the state law. There's nothing really Radnor could do. You can't be stricter than the state law.
And just also to mention, what you spoke of earlier, we have very few of these. 1 or 2 per grade level. So when we're 1 to 5 per grade level, when we're talking, K to 12, maybe 60 students out of 3,500 students. So it's a very small percentage of our students. And I think the point of pride with that is the fact that our certified school nurses and our nursing staff in general does really do their best to try to get the parents to get the immunization, works closely with them, and maybe even contacting the physician's office to have that information sent over. So every effort is made to get that information.
any other questions or comments on this? Where do you see us going from here with this information, Amy?
Well, I guess I would like the numbers to be part of our minutes and I would like us to look at it over time. I mean, I don't know. I would bet, just from talking with my kids, one in the second year of college, one in the second year of high school, who went through the Radnor schools, they didn't get any education about what the vaccine preventable diseases are in health class, so they didn't know, they didn't know anything about them. So to me also, I might wonder if thinking ahead, if it would be good to include some kind of education about vaccine preventable disease and in the health curriculum, just because these kids will be future parents someday. So.
Okay. Is there any other old business before we move on? Any new business?
I have one thing. Villanova University is going to be, well, probably going to be, they have to get the zoning variances, but probably they will be starting a major construction project along where right now the parking lots are on Lancaster Avenue, to build a multi-story combination, dormitories, theater, multi-story parking lot. But the basic thing is more dorm space to bring students, the off-campus students, on campus. And although they say they don't want to increase enrollment, I think the neighbors may have some concerns about that, but that's a different issue. But, I think there's some health issues that are posed by this construction in such an intensely residential neighborhood and an area where a lot of people drive through. So I wondered, in terms of, dust, noise. So I guess I was thinking that it might be good to, I'm not sure who the appropriate person is, but have somebody from the university come and meet with us as a board. And for us to certainly express our concerns and, sort of go on the record with what our concerns would be and hear what they have to say about their thoughts about, moving ahead with this. And this is all, as I said, it's not immediate, but it is one of these things that, looks like it's going to happen. And I'd like us to be involved.
Unless you have other thoughts, that's something that we might ask Mr. Fisher to check into for us and figure out who is the right person at Villanova and see what we can do to get someone here. But I think we need to be specific as to what it is we want to ask that person. For example, how are they going to control some of these potential health problems and minimize them, not just for their student body, but for people who live in the immediate vicinity. So I will ask Mr. Fisher to look into that for us.
He would be a good person to talk to because I know the Garrett Hill area committee was sending out information about meeting and was sending out the information about meeting with Villanova over this. I'm not exactly sure what their purpose was, if this had, as far as anything to do with the purpose that you're speaking of, Amy, but Mr. Fisher would be an excellent resource for us.
He represents that area, does he not?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, some of those concerns were about traffic. A lot of them are about traffic flow because they want to have the entrance going onto North Ithan and as opposed to onto Lancaster where the parking is now. So the neighbors, especially in that area, were especially concerned. But I think a lot of the neighborhood associations are concerned about the dust, the noise, the inconvenience, and then what it would be like once it's done, even at the same time recognizing that it certainly would benefit the institution. So,
do we know where Villanova is on their timeline with this project, or is it just in the, I'm sure it sounds like it's in the very early stages.
They are moving ahead with it. I'm not sure what I think the next step is going to be the zoning variances because the buildings they want to build are taller than what the zoning allows. So So I'm not, I could find out, though, because I know people who were at that meeting.
I assume that the township has a copy of their long-range plans, and maybe we should have copies of that. It's not just Villanova, but the other universities in the township.
First step will be touching base with John Fisher. See where we go from there. Anything else under new business? I don't see any member of the public here, so we have no public participation. Our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, January 17th, here in this room at 5:00 p.m. Just as a reminder,
No, because I think it is the 17th, but I think it's the Tuesday. It's Tuesday, January 17th, because Monday, the 16th, is the holiday.
You're right. Absolutely. Thank you for that.
No problem.
Our meeting will be on Tuesday in January, not Monday. Thank you for that. I didn't catch that. That's, of course, Monday is the Martin Luther King holiday.
Right, and the same thing is for February also.
Right. But getting back to January's meeting, just as a heads up, at that meeting, one of the items on the agenda will be our annual organization meeting at which we nominate and elect president and vice president of the board. So people should be thinking of that between now and then. And we'll come to that in January. If there's no further business, we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year to everyone. Happy holidays to all. Thank you.